do our invocation. Please stand and join me. Most gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for today, Lord. We thank you for the blessing of the rains you give us, and we thank you for the sunshine you provided for us today. Lord, just ask you to be with each and every one of us now as we lead this county and the business part of it. And Lord, just ask you just to continue to bless those who have been sick, be with those who's lost loved ones this week, Lord. And Lord, just thank you for all the blessings you have given to us, and just ask for forgiveness for we fail you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. Please continue to stand for our pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 1, to approve of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All right, now I need a motion for them to approve, for us to approve their agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Messick.
I
Seconded by-
second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Now move on to item 2, the presentation of Board of Education's budget request. Mr. Dr. Rice, if you'd like to lead us in that.
Do you have a preference whether we start with capital or current expense?
However you want to do it.
All right. We'll start with our current expense, and basically to make things kind of easier, we're certainly able to answer more questions for you. The main part is in your package, you'll see that Ms. Moore has provided for you that she has taken into account some things that we had some savings in to save some money, other things where we may have some rate increases to increase some funds, but that is all to just keep current the things that we have already had. And then we talk about our new request. And the board has agreed that these new requests, not in priority order, but the first would be to fund the First Responder Firefighter Academy that we had been discussing. And we had looked at that for half a year position this year, knowing it would be a full year position moving forward, but that would allow us to gauge interest in stuff in the fall in order to implement in the spring. And that would be a $37,000 increase for half the year this year. We had also looked at a halftime TIMS operator. TIMS is our bus routing software. Mr. Mendenhall may be able to speak to it and help you with this. This is an old DOS system that's been around for I'm not sure how many years, but this is a system that somebody just can't jump into and do. We've had one TIMS operator for years, and things like the COVID-19 makes it more critical to ask for requests like this. If somebody were to get this and be out 2, 3, 4 weeks, we would be crippled because all of our bus routing software does this. It's about a 4-day class to get certified in it. But beyond getting certified in it, it's one of these awkward systems that if you don't use it on a day-to-day basis, you're not going to keep it. So it's kind of like learning a foreign language. If you learned it in high school, took Spanish in high school, and then never spoke it again, you would have a hard time being fluent in it. And so we've asked for a halftime TIMS operator and then a halftime data manager position to be a backup, again, for people that are out. So that position would be in there, but we've originally looked for a full-time with that. Our board cut that to a halftime position to see if we could get a part-time person to help us with that at $17,000. We've also asked for a new maintenance position. This would be classified as a carpenter 1, but really this position would be a locksmith apprentice. Our locksmith that's been doing this for many years is getting close to retirement. That same type thing we talked about with the TIMS operator. This is a skilled position that would need a year or more of apprenticeship to learn our system, learn our key system, learn how to do that job, where we would train them to do it, and then when that person retired to be able to move into that position, rather than if we were to contract out all of our locksmith positions, it would be a lot more money than we're paying for a current position.
If I might address that real quick, Ricky, our current employee that's doing that, 67 years old?
Correct. Nearing the end there. The fourth thing on our list is a salary adjustment for our classified people. to balance the budget. For years now, we have frozen them on the salary schedule, and where the state has come through with raises for a lot of other positions, people that are doing the same positions we have, they have frozen the school system employees. So our custodians, clerical staff, where other people got raises in the last few years, ours have not. And so we're looking to move them back up in the experience scale to pay them for the years of experience that they have. That would be roughly $181,000. And those are our 4 new requests. We've had other items on there. We have pared that down, realizing it would be a tougher budget year, but felt like these were important enough to bring to you in our current expansion budget. Board, anything that y'all would like to add to that? Or would you like to wait for that for the full conversation later? Ms. Knight?
Thank you. Well, actually, I'll probably just piggyback on a lot of things that Dr. Wright said that are important to me as a board member. And one of the things is that we keep our resource officers to maintain safety for students and personnel. You know, people have come to rely on those in the schools, and we wouldn't want to take a step back on that. And we certainly want to be able to keep those. And another thing is I'm wanting to try and get the salary adjustment for the classified employees based on years of experience. You know, it could be phased in over a few years, but I would, you know, like for you to consider it this year because it would show how much the employees are valued. And I feel like it's time that we need to put them on that base of years of experience. And then I'd like to try to maintain the budget we have had so far so that we wouldn't have to cut any personnel. You know, if we could just maintain this year in this COVID-19 atmosphere with all the things that we've all had to go through with the school system, with the county, you know, with all the individuals. I'd also like to add the first responder and firefighter at 50%, if at all possible, because I feel like this would benefit the students as well as benefit the county, because, you know, the county's always needing first responders and firefighters, and it would be great if we could train them in our schools. I think it would give pride to, I think that it would maintain a lot of pride for their county, and I think it would help the county, and I feel like they would be invested in staying here for a while, being the first responder and firefighter. And I think a lot of young people would respond to that. And I believe that was Mike's idea a long time ago, introducing it, and it really was a good one. So I appreciate if you would take these into consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Bessie. Ms. Tatter?
I'm going to reserve my time for later,
Okay.
Mr. Rogers. Thank you.
Well, I'll go ahead and run over the brief summary. The firefighter was actually, Will Carter came to Dr. Rose and myself and suggested it. It's been a push in Forsyth County and some of the other counties just to try to supplement volunteer fire departments and EMS. I will say this, unfortunately, last night my son had an incident on Greenfield Road with a truck and a tree and a rainy night. The tree fell as he was passing by. Everybody's safe. But we had a county road that in the middle of a curve, a tree blocking it. Within 5 minutes of calling it in, South Stokes Volunteer Fire Department was there, removing the tree, making it safe, and then they left immediately from there to go take care of Brook Cove Road because it was flooded. I think we need to do whatever we can to try to supplement and ensure that the next time somebody has to call, there's somebody there to answer the phone, and that's what we're trying to get at. It was a push on behalf of the economic development. It not only gets our kids ready to become employed as firefighters upon graduation, but it also, those kids typically become the next generation of volunteer firefighters for Stokes County. Tim's data manager, Dr. Rice, did a wonderful job covering.
The locksmith, we're just concerned at 67, when he decides he needs to enjoy his retirement, we're gonna have a bigger hole to fill than the price of admission for 1 to 2 years until their retirement now. He may work another 10, we don't know. We wish him the best and we thank him for everything he's done. But when he does go, it's gonna cost us more to fill it than it would be at that point, because we're gonna have to do it contract-wise. When we do it contract-wise, we're paying a higher rate, and then we don't have everybody train somebody to do it at a more economic advance. And then salary adjustments, we all went on the campaign together. We've all heard all the retention aspects. This is one way we can show our people how much we love them and appreciate what they're doing. So, with that being said, turn the floor back over. Any questions at that time, or do you want us to go on to capital?
I don't have any questions, but I will say I do firmly agree with you guys on the firefighter class. I do see it being a savings to the county later on and a big help, so I do fully concur with you guys on that. Question, Morris?
What, have you cost the interest for that, or surveyed it or anything in the system?
I'll have to talk with our guy at Tim, see how many have signed up, but we have added that. I can get enrollment numbers.
It was roughly what, 44 to 50 students that showed initial interest and signed up for the class.
That sounds about right, but I should have some more numbers.
And I will say Mr. Rose has worked with a very good schedule to be able to serve all 3 traditional high schools. With this person, correct? And it's not just located at one high school, it's half at north, half at south, because south has a ROTC bus that already transitions between west and south to allow those students that opportunity. So we're just piggybacking off that, using part-time employment to keep our costs down for the first year.
Okay. Another question. Pat mentioned phasing in the classified employees. How, have you thought about how you would do that if you phased it in versus all at one time?
Well, we would just have to figure out how to chunk it with years of experience and try to make that work. The biggest thing against that is a lot of these positions are experienced people getting close to retirement. Retirement's based on your highest 4 years salary, and so if we took a phased-in approach that took 2 or 3 years, some people would not ever experience the full benefit of that in their retirement as we phased it in as well. But we would just have, depending on a number that we got, we would have to look to see what we could do. So we've not done a lot of work on that because we wouldn't know what number we're working on.
May I say one thing in regards to the Fire Academy? Also, I greatly support opportunity and course offerings for students. I think just something to consider, and like I had posed with Mr. Rose at other meetings, was negative effects to private sector trades and things like carpentry, masonry, could have inadvertently had negative effects on those classroom numbers and enrollment. So just again, just a thought and something to consider there.
I was gonna say Surrey County once had a class on firefighters. Do they still have it?
I believe Surrey is bringing it back. I know Forsyth has gone full speed at Walkertown and is actually adding it.
I'm talking about the community college.
I believe they still have it as well as Forsyth, but some of the classes aren't obtainable. Dr. Rose?
Forsyth does not have, they have tucked that under workforce and economic development, I believe. And so we don't qualify under CCP to take this one. So we would have to offer on our campus. The one they offer is on a degree program. So it not be the same credentials. We're setting a more model like what Walkertown has. Forsyth. Also, we'll share that Yankton has just started the program.
And the way we're tailoring
Forsyth Tech campus was built very near the Stokes Forsyth line. Actually, I guess the address would be Tobacco. The primary emphasis that I recall for that campus was public safety, fire training, those types of things. And I'm just wondering what has changed over the years, if anything, from that concept.
Again, Dr. Rose, I mean, from what I understand, it has become a 2-year postgraduate degree and not just a workforce
And
employment.
when you're looking at like career and college promise classes, the ones that we can offer for our students for free, those are the ones that we have sought out with the Meadows campus and also the Northwest campus too. I have talked with them in regards to things such as their nursing program, and it's not tucked into a CCP pathway, so we have for free for our students. Now, I had entered some conversation with Alan Murdoch, Dr. Murdoch with campus there in regards to it, so we do not have that CCP pathway to use. It is tucked under PWD, and our students would have to pay for that.
With doing it with us, they would get it tuition free. And
Well, with the firefighter class, it is under CTE, and they will get the credentials needed to work for us as firefighters. They'll get the working credentials.
One follow-up question, and thank you for the information. What other locations are using this concept successfully? Some that you know of?
Forsyth County Walkertown they established it, and that's who actually presented to us in this building. Will Carter. They have they have reaped the benefits of what it has done for their local municipalities, and to the point that they are expanding it throughout multiple high schools in Forsyth County, and like he said, Yankton County schools are now adopting a model next year.
I could easily support a concept like this with one provision, and that is that it does increase the volunteers, because one challenge we're facing in our county, and I'm sure other counties are too, is we just are not continuing to get the amount of volunteers that we have historically for firefighters. And if this would help turn that around, at least to some extent, it could more than pay for itself. Because when we hire a full-time firefighter, that's kind of expensive. Particularly when you have to put maybe 2 or 3 into one station.
The dollar figure that was presented to us was roughly, if we had to employ a full-time firefighter at a $9 million cost annually. So the number, 75,000 second year for a full-time instructor buys $9 million, and it's pretty simple to do that math. I feel like it is a good pathway to get more community interest in the firefighter. I can say, and like I referenced last night, the majority of the people that showed up were my age or above, and that kind of shocked me. There were 2 young men; they were high schoolers coming out to help. But if we can get more of that, then we have the next generation ready to go. You may have said it already, Dr. Rice. Are these in priority order, or is it random?
no, sir, these are random.
Okay.
Not at this
If I may, yes. But Russ, could you prioritize these? Because if it comes down, and I really respect our manager's role in working with a budget, helping create our budget, could you assign a priority to these?
This is the board's list, not my list. So this is a
Or
board
anyone.
approval list, so the board would have to prioritize this.
I didn't give you my version, and they can give you their version of the priority list. It may not be the same if you're meeting both.
That'd be helpful.
Everybody's individual.
mind, the first, we need to take care of the people that have taken care of us forever, so we need to. Back. Number 4 is the salary adjustment. Okay, salary adjustment, because that goes back to retention. And then 5 and 6. And then I would say it's a tie between 1 and 3. Because it's going to cost the county more money in the long term.
But I don't have the information.
The maintenance position, because of the short-term window that we've got to look at. I hope the gentleman works with us another 50 years, but the likelihood at 67, it's a 1 or 2 year pathway into retirement. But if we can get one trained this year, that cost after he retires drops back. So our maintenance cost would come down. So it's going to say, and the contracted cost for a locksmith is going to come down. So we're going to save money in the long term by funding it.
Do you know how many years service he has?
Ricky, how long has he been ish? He's 20 years at 67, so again, if he decides tomorrow not to come to work, we don't have a locksmith, and this at least gives us a pathway for having a locksmith without the contractor at all. And also the first responder firefighter, I'm going to say it's a tie for 2, and it's going to be a tough decision. The good advantage of the first responder is we can come in on the part-time employment for the first year, so the startup cost won't be as bad. And then hopefully after COVID, when the budget gets back to a more new norm, we could potentially see that. But I see that as a top priority also, because it is, again, we're all stewards of the county and the people we serve. So that's a potential savings for the county, fairly large numbers. And then Tim's data manager, it would be really helpful to have a backup for that, but it's not going to shut us down or cost the county more money if we don't do it. That's my personal opinion. I'm trying to have varying opinions.
One other question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
You prefaced your presentation on these items as 4 new requests. I'm curious how these happen to be new requests and weren't in your original budget request.
I meant for this year. They have been in this
They
budget request.
were in
Yes, sir.
your original request.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. New for what we're looking at is new for the 2021 school year. Fiscal year.
And you feel like these are important enough to highlight in comparison with all the
Well, the other things are just continuing what we currently have. And so we wanted to maintain those things. And then this is looking at the 4 new line items that we would look at for the 2021 school year.
Thank you.
I know the schools we went to, the safety part of schools last year before last, and we took the technology route as far as locking the schools down and all this kind of stuff. Is that the reason for the locksmith, maintenance locksmith?
Well, the locksmith does a lot of things, but like where some of our buildings are older buildings where keys have gotten out year and year, we have no key security in some places. And so we have taken on the project the last couple of years of rekeying some buildings to help maintain that security. So those type things are when a door breaks or when Ricky can speak more to his day-to-day operations of things, but those type of activities he is constantly working on.
I add to that, we have some buildings that have been kept the same for the last 30 years that I've been here. So that was one thing with additional addition. Not only is we learning that giving the manpower to go in and just rekey all of our schools, keep more control of our keys. And what we do, we've got a key policy that we worked through several years ago, that when we rekey a school, one of the things we have is we keep records of who has keys
agreement which says if they lose the keys, they can cost them up to $500. And a lot of times that's a deterrent from people wanting an exterior door key. And sometimes people don't want the key, and they realize they think it costs them money if they lose it.
So, yeah, Commissioner Lee.
We have, I agree what, he just said about the keys, because they do get lost, other people keep them for no reason at all, and they scattered every direction, so I understand, probably need a lot of free keying.
In addition, Ricky, we have gone to a key that can't be copied.
Correct.
To try to limit that.
A signature key with Sergeant, if we replace the cylinders, then it's a special key that they have to come to the maintenance department. They can't go to the local hardware and have it made. It's a special key. That's another deterrent.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, you would like to know what the rest of the board members.
Oh, that's all right.
Prioritize if you want to call on.
Before we do that, could you, go over again your order, because I think I might agree with you.
The one I came up with was take care of our existing employees, so that'd be number 4 first.
Right.
And then 1 and 3 were hand in hand. I guess it's a dead heat tie, kind of. Both of them are, to me, are needs that can save the county money in the long term. And then the last would be number 2, the Tim's data manager.
Okay.
I just look at it from me personally, I look at it from a cost saving. What's going to save us the most in the long term? What's my best return on investment?
Okay. Right. You would like to come again?
Sure. My feelings are similar to Mr. Rogers, and the salary adjustment based on years of experience is much needed for retention. And then definitely second, like Mr. Goins has mentioned, the needed maintenance position, because that is so key to safety. I would probably say number 2, with the TIM system, where we did discuss in a prior meeting taking 18 months to train, I think, on that system, and we have one person that currently does it, so if they're out or unforeseen sickness or something, it would kind of be a scramble to learn that system, and it deals with bus routing, right, and efficiency, and very complicated system there, but very important. And then number 4, offering the fire and first responder. That is a great option and opportunity.
You just reversed all of them. Either 2.
Did I reverse?
Yeah. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's me. We got it.
Ms. Bassett?
Okay. I would like to do that salary adjustment based on years of experience is my number 1. Because I do feel like that these people deserve this opportunity. I do think that I see the great need for number 2 there. I'm not saying I'm going to pick that one next, but we do have someone that only does the buses, and that is the way that the state has made the bus systems. Is that right? It's their state. It's a very, very complicated system. And it's not something someone can just step in. This person retires, this person comes in and can take over. Because, our county is so spread out. And the buses go so many miles. And, we don't want the students on the buses for hours and hours that they don't need to be there. And there's this one lady that knows the system, but it is imperative that we get someone in there that she can train. And it would take a long time for someone to just come in fresh and learn that. And we've been talking about this for a couple of years now. And so, and it's the same thing with the locksmiths. you know, that same thing. In a lot of counties, you know, they have more than one locksmith, and our county's small, and we just have one. My neighbor, a couple street over, was a locksmith for Forsyth County, and, you know, till he retired, and he even had a truck that he could drive to the different schools and perform whatever needs to be done there at school instead of having to take it back to a shop. So that's very important too. But I really do want those first responders. But I will have to say that I would go with number one. For the number 4 would be number 1. And I'm going to say number 1 would be my number 2 because of the firefighters. And then number 2 would be number 3 for me. And then the locksmith, number 3 would be number 4 for me. I wish that we could do them all. When you add them up, it's not that great amount of money. It's really not.
I meant to say that we did originally have 8 items, and we did work hard to kind of cut that in half, knowing the downturn in the economy and everything that's going on. There's so much we would like, you know, to have for our students in schools, but we know it's a very difficult time, and we did try to be mindful and cut it back to the 4 requests.
Ms. Moore, do you remember what the original request was?
I was thinking it was over $1 million.
I do not.
It was like $1 million too, wasn't it?
Original.
It was $1 million to change.
With all of the 8 was $824,022 for all 8 that we looked at.
I think so.
It was $1,385,837. So we've cut out a lot of,
Cut it down to $278,755.
which is very manageable.
We cut 75% out of the original.
Yeah.
What this board did.
That we
Just
really
because we
felt like
realized
we needed.
These are rough times and we need to all do what we can to save money.
Cut out some personnel that we felt like we really needed. We really chopped a lot out to make this more palatable for you to look at. And I think these 4 are something that we really do need.
Ms. Tatter?
I'm gonna, say that my top priority, given the ones that the commissioners are looking at, will be number 1 for the firefighter position, instructor position, because we've got to get something to get more students in, because I'm afraid that our numbers that have been dwindling over the years are going to dwindle even more, given what's going on right now. So being able to offer more elective courses is important. So that's what my number 1 will be to fund that instructor. My second will be to take care of our current staff who work so hard and who work so diligently and are committed to Stokes County Schools, and have done, many of them who have been employed for many, many years. They more than deserve what modest increase in salary we are recommending that they get. They are working in daily changing times right now and have done a wonderful job during this pandemic in adjusting, and now more than ever they are deserving of that. And I'm going to leave my priorities at that, because as Ms. Knight said, we trimmed this down considerably, and the requests that I personally made didn't make the cut in those positions that I had requested. I believe still are most paramount to our students, and now especially given what's going on So firefighter and staff retention fully have increased. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Linda, we're aware, how long have they been frozen this morning?
2008.
These people haven't had a raise in 12 years.
We had a raise from the state, but not the state increase.
When the state says all public school employees would get a 1% this year, or a 0.5% this year, they would get that, but they never got their experience bump for the last 13 years.
It averages about a 1% from one step to the other. That's what you're talking about.
Which again, when you're start talking about yearly, might not sound that much, but over the course of 13 years, if you've lost 13% compounded, and that would affect your retirement for the next 20 to 30 years, that's a huge loss of money to an individual, which makes them want to look at another place because they may be able to go to another county and say, I've got 25 years experience, and they'll start paying them on that day.
It would probably, in an average, in a word is average, probably $100 a month for most people. You have some less, a little bit more, but an average would probably be around $100.
Any other questions the board can do for you?
For the capital part of the budget, again, Mr. Goins goes around to each of the schools, asks our principals what the most pressing needs are. Ricky, we get about $6 million every year, about $6 million in requests every year from the schools and from the maintenance side of it, looking at needs. Of course, we appreciate being put a part of that facility study that you're going to do. Understand that it hasn't got to the school part of it yet, so we're doing what we normally do and prioritizing it ourselves. And we came up with about, the staff and I pared that down to about 2.1 million. And then again, the board understanding the current situation, cut that down to 1.5 million, 1,524,000, and the 12 highest priority needs that we have in our district. The first one is the first one every year, is $100,000 emergency to take care of things that come up that we don't know about. Again, a tree blow over, hit something, you just have to have emergency money when you're running 19 facilities. So elementary fall protection, that's the mulch that goes in the playground. Kids fall off of those all the time, and you have to have that cushioning to keep them safe. The fire alarm at London Elementary, we can't get parts for it anymore. Ricky, would you like to expand on that right now? But we can't get parts for it. And so that is a safety hazard if something breaks. We don't have a fire alarm in a building, so we need to get that fixed. The South Stokes gym floor, for those of y'all that go there a lot and see where Miss Pretty's corner is, back in that corner, there's holes in the floor there. We kind of block it off. It's at the edge of the bleachers. But now we're starting to get cracks in the floor. And so and you can see where the boards are falling out from the other ones. And so we can do a patch job for what was it, about $20,000 to $40,000. $20,000 to $40,000 is the estimate I was getting. To do a patch job, and they said that may hold for a year or two, or to replace the whole thing now at $125,000. Again, so we could do it for $20,000 to $40,000 now, and then in a few years be paying $125,000. So we saw it as a cost saving to go ahead and try to do that. King Elementary School has a mobile unit where they teach music. That ramp is deteriorating, and looking to go back and put a metal ramp there for safety. Then we have our roofing projects at Lawsonville. They go check the roofs every year. This is our worst roof. Has some leaking problems that we need to take care of. Nancy Reynolds' roof, I know you're thinking that's a new building, so why would they need a roof right now? This is actually the gymnasium. When they redid Nancy Reynolds, they did not do the gymnasium roof at that time. So that roof is also old and tearing apart, and that is our second biggest roof need right now. The West Stokes chillers, obviously that building's 21 years old now. Those chillers are at the end of their life. Again, not being able to repair those. If those die, we're in trouble. So that's obviously on our list.
Hold on, and you're having to restart them every 2 or 3 days?
We're restarting 3 to 4 times a week. I send a maintenance guy by the first thing every morning. We're restarting 3 to 4 times a week. They'll just kick out. It's not a set thing. It's just random. It's different things will kick it out. We've had train out to look at it. We've replaced a few parts, but the technicians, they keep telling us, trained that they're just worn out.
And the lead time on that project is?
The lead time on the equipment can be 8 to 12 weeks because once you order this equipment, like go back to train the chillers, then they put an order in and build the equipment. They don't have it sitting on the shelf waiting to buy.
It's 8 to 12 weeks in a good year. Who knows what it's gonna be now?
That's true.
And there's 2 chillers that control the whole building.
And so we're at the point now, we think it's time to go ahead and replace those, because if they were to crash and not, then you're looking 12 to 16 weeks at the best case scenario of having air conditioning in that building again with 900 people in there every day.
But just to think, and I hate to interrupt, but just to think, a maintenance person has to go over to West Stokes before he even starts his day. His first thing is to go to West Stokes and start the chillers or check on them before he can even start his day. Somebody has to do that. And how long have they been doing that?
Over the last year and a half.
Right. And
And we're starting school a week early, so mid-August, it's the coolest part of the year to start. If a chiller goes down, half the building's hot.
August is our hottest month.
You had a failure like that in the jail, we had to bring in portable air conditioners, that's a big hassle.
And a big
Expensive.
expense
That's
on
about
the
$10
list.
million.
You can bring in portable chillers as well, but it's expensive.
The 9th one on our list is the South Stokes boiler. Again, old boiler.
It's like 78 models when it's
Leaking, so need to replace that. Have a boiler burner at Piney Grove that is obsolete and no parts available. Again, an older model that the burner needs to be replaced. And then yearly we refinish the gym floors at our secondary schools, and that cost. We provide the labor for that. That's parts. That's the equipment we need for the refinishing floors.
Refinishing, that's a contract service. They come in sand and refinish.
Okay. And then the North Stokes roof is our last roof on our list for $190,000. That's one that's been on the list for a while now. So that is on our list again this year. Any questions or I'll let you take over. Let y'all do it how y'all want to do it.
Commissioner
I
Lane?
got one. The Ninth Reynolds roof, how much warranty did that roof have on it when we built the school?
This is the original roof.
This is the original
It's
roof
the
on the
barrel roof
gymnasium.
on the
It wasn't
gym.
replaced when they built the new school.
Oh, you're talking about,
The gym.
when you're talking about this gym, the
Yes,
barrel
this is
roof, I got you.
the-
I thought you was talking about the school.
So, yeah, Commissioner Lane.
Yeah, that's all.
Commissioner Walker?
Processing. Seemed like I recall last year we were able to fully fund the capital request. Not only correct.
I think the original request was 2.1, 1.7, Jake, you may know.
That was last year.
1.78.
Yeah, 780.
You got real close and we were extremely happy.
Right.
And that's the reason we realized with this year, we dropped our capital to what I classified it as a want to have, got to have, need to have, and this was a need to have.
There's lots of other needs in our buildings. The carpet in Piney Grove Media Center has been there since that building was built. It's 21 years old, has 400 kids a day walking on it. Food time, things get spilled. It's nasty. I wouldn't want to lay down on it. None of us would want it in our living rooms. We would never invite anybody over to our houses if our carpet looked like that but we don't look at that as a safety hazard or something that could end up costing us more money. So there's lots of other needs that we have. Again, when we ask our principals, give us your top three, and again, you're in a 65-year-old building, you have more than three. But when we ask for the top three, we get about a $6 million list. We pared it down to 1.5.
I think our manager had to do a lot of paring also.
Right, I understand, and that's why we did as
Compared
well.
to the original request.
Which in our original request from Dr. Rice was $600,000 more.
We took it.
A track project off with this.
No, it's not.
What I'd like to do is fund all the current expense request, all the capital needs request, balanced with how does the school needs compare with the county needs? I think that they need to be equitable. And I believe my preference would be to let our manager look at all these requests, along with all the other budget issues he's having to deal with, and see how they relate to each other, how the priorities, overall priorities compare. Because I think Julia told us, Julia, if I may, Julia, did you say that the current estimate, current reduction in sales tax revenues is about 13.25%? That's the best estimate she could come up with. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't know of anyone, I think her and Ms. Moore might be close, but don't know of anyone who I'd rather see trying to estimate what kind of shortfall we might have. So when we apply that to the county needs and apply it to the school needs, I want to see balance. I want to see it fair and equitable on both sides. And that's what I'll be looking for. Now, I can see how all these are very legitimate needs. And things like the salary adjustment, I understand what you're saying. Turnover is expensive. No matter where it occurs, it can be costly. So if we can reduce turnover, I think there may be a long-term savings. And I'm just looking, when our manager, for example, can take a look at these requests and where we are with the county to see how the pieces fit together. And I want to see it as fair and equitable as possible.
Technically, that's what he should have already done before he proposed the budget, though.
It's a work in progress.
It's our fault. It's in our court now. But you still, I mean, we still get his thoughts. He's made a recommended budget already.
Oh, yes. And in light of what we're discussing here today, and that's a good point, Commissioner Martin, but in light of what we're discussing here today, I want to see what, if anything, he sees differently. Because I would put some value on that.
Well, to answer your question, can I do that? I have funded your capital request. I have funded the 1.524 million in this. So all these requests here that they've asked for, I'm sure that they've looked at the shortfall that has been suggested by the state in sales tax, being the capital outlay is your sales tax. I took for granted that the Board of Education looked at what they had to have that was most pressing and made it fit the cut that the sales tax was being recommended from the state. So I did not mess with the capital outlay. They cut it already. And so I have, in my recommended budget, I do have the $1,524,000 in it. So this, whatever they got laid out here, evidently as priorities that needs to be done, and that's probably the top 12 in like Dr. Rice and the board members are saying they may have 50 more. But here's the top request. You know, if you got some carpet that looks that bad, I believe I just replace it. But it's there. It's in it. There's no cut to the capital outlay in the proposed budget.
And in regards to you, Commissioner Walker, our 1.52 124 number, we as a board cut it roughly 28% from what was recommended from us. Trying to get down to the bare minimums because this is traumatic times. So we took the 13.5, not knowing it was 13.5, but we realized there's no sense sending you a budget that nobody can afford. And it is actually $200,000 less than y'all funded last year.
And I commend you for taking that approach. I think that's a reasonable, very realistic way to be dealing with the situation we have. And we're facing other challenges too, if my memory is correct. And it's not always, but maybe it's close on this one. We're looking at a shortfall with ad valorem from what we originally expected also. So it just kind of compounds itself, and we're going to have some tough choices. But it's encouraging to hear our manager say that he's fully funded all of these. Because when I look at this list, I don't see anything on there that doesn't seem like a very realistic, real need. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This comment's more applied to current expense because there's where the mismatch is.
Yeah, that's where there's going to have to be some work.
And I'd like to also,
recommended that too.
and also I'd like to say with the current expense, there's the huge unknown that's in the elephant in the room is COVID-19. We have not got guidance from the state yet as to what it's going to take to open school in the fall. We don't know what it could be. If they were to say, you have to put a monitor on every bus to check temperatures before they get on the bus in the fall, that's 76 part-time people that could be required to have school. We just don't know those things yet. So again, we've tried not to guess at what those things are and looking at padding a budget, but I do want to say that if something more big to come up, we may have to come back and let you know what that need is, because there is that emergency situation that's in our state and nation. And we asked again yesterday as a statewide superintendent's conference call to let people know the need, and they were like, well, we're working on that guidance. And we're like, well, it's 57 at that point yesterday. It was 57 days until the first day of school, not counting the weekends. And if it were to take 60 days to order something, we need to know now so that we can find out, but we've not been given that yet. And hopefully it's not an expensive line item. Maybe it's just practice things that we need to do. But if they were to say, we need a nurse in every school to start the school year, we need 14 nurses. If it were, those are the things we don't know. And again, hopefully it's minor practice issues that the state guidelines allow us to open school with. But that is a huge unknown that we don't know what we're dealing with right now.
I do have one question for you to see if they've said anything about this as far as the school buses. Have they said anything in the room? One kid, every other seat on the bus? Because that's just not feasible.
Again, there are no guidelines yet, but they have told us to start planning that if we were to put one kid per seat, a 72 passenger bus goes down to a 24 passenger bus. And then they said, also imagine if it's every other seat. Now it's down to a 12 passenger bus at a 8 mile per gallon tank to haul 8 kids in. Things that you don't think of. These little masks, if they were to say give a disposable mask to every employee and every student for every day through the school year, $983,000 at the current rate they're selling these. It would be almost $1 million to put a mask on every kid and every adult every day. Again, those are just things we don't know yet because we've not gotten that guidance. Hopefully we'll get that soon, and there are some funding streams that they're looking to help pay for some of those right now. So I don't think it would all come back to the county, and we would certainly use those funding streams effectively and appropriately. But I just want out that there's some unknown that we still have for next year.
One quick question, I apologize for not knowing the answer. Ricky, the chillers at West Stokes is 12 weeks to get them in. How long is the install time?
Weather, startup, they could take 3-4 weeks to install them.
Kind of what we had talked about, a 12-week lead time, so maybe a 16-week could not be installed while the kids are in school and the children are being.
If they can do one and one, it may be, but then your price goes up because they have to have the crane out there twice to set one and come back set the other.
They're definitely like a fall or winter type project at this point, because there's not enough time. Okay.
And that's not that uncommon if you can't get it in the summertime.
Pay for money right now to buy it and try to get it in. And we can stop by the cashier and pick up a check on the way out if you need us to.
I'm just gonna make one comment real quick. I know this is probably tough for you guys. You said you start off with the $6 million capital request.
That's limiting our schools to 3 items.
To get this thing down to 1.5, and I know I had a discussion with, Chairman Rogers here. Well, the warrants, I said to you, just cut. You don't need it, don't put it on there.
Just got, and you and I walked the track itself, and that one we said, okay, West Stokes has been without a usable track for 3 years. If we have to, we're in the process of fixing West Stokes now. We'll run the south meets at West if south becomes unusable. It's not at that point yet, but if it does until the county can afford it, we're not gonna even recommend doing it.
Which is not bad. I mean, at least you're still giving something out of,
We went at this budget with an axe.
I'm just gonna commend y'all on this. I appreciate y'all putting the hard work to. I'm sure it wasn't easy, and I'm sure it took a while, and I appreciate y'all getting this narrowed down. Commissioner Morris and Commissioner Minhall, any questions or comments there?
Go ahead, Ron, if you're ready. I got some.
You go ahead, Ray. I'm going.
Okay, I have several points I'd like to make. First of all, like we just said, our work's gonna really be in the current expense area to try to resolve the request there versus the recommendation, but I'm sure we can come up with something, hopefully that's acceptable. To follow a little bit of what Dr. Rice was saying, and we've had this discussion in our budget meetings, of having some kind of contingency plan based on the virus. Right now, our contingency plan will be, if we were to approve our current budget request or whatever it would be like, we would have right around 20% fund balance, and our only contingency plan is to spend the fund balance if something surprises us. That may end up being our contingency plan, but, and we could spend it down to, you spend it down to 8% without the LGC send you a letter, so I don't know that. I hope we can come up with maybe something a little more finite than just spending the fund balance, and that's all revolves around the fact that we don't know what our revenues are going to be. Julia's used every tool possible, everything that's out there, and it has ended up reducing our revenue estimates about 13%, I think, right, Julia? But I hear bigger numbers than that on TV all the time about the economy and all the business closing and everything, so I really don't think anybody has a really good answer to what that percentage really should be. Hopefully, 13% will keep us in a sort of normal situation, and it won't be a lot more than that. But we're going to have a contingency that could bleed over on you guys a little bit, depending on how bad the situation might possibly be. And we'll just have to wait and see with the reopening. We'll address that somehow in our budget, I think, some kind of policy statement or something before we finalize it. The second issue I have is internet expansion. We got a proposal at our meeting Monday night. It completely turns upside down the program that we had been working with to expand internet in the county. And I would encourage you guys, when you get time, to watch that meeting and listen to Eric Kramer's presentation. He gave a textbook explanation of how we can have internet in this rural county at a much cheaper price and a much quicker time frame than what we had planned before. I'm going to write a summary of what he talked about in my blog, which will probably be out tomorrow sometime. But that will not substitute for hearing the comprehensive explanation that he provided of how we might go about this. And so And so internet, since I've been county manager here and as a commissioner, is my number one issue, is getting internet to students and then other folks as well that need it. And it remains my number one issue. They gave us a proposal that if we would match 500,000 with them, that would give us $1 million, then we could probably qualify for up to $2 more million that are going to become available in October, with a $30 million tranche that I think is almost approved to be used for internet expansion in rural communities. And these guys have a history of being able to take funds and leverage them and win these contracts. I think, he said, of all the projects they've done, which are all over the state in Virginia and everywhere, I think they funded like 50 or 60% of it with outside money, not their money or not the customer's money. So they know how to do this. So we've got, what their major request was that we put some kind of a working group together to address this issue. What we had basically before he got here Monday night was a program that would probably cost another $20 to $30 million to put fiber to everybody in the county that needed internet. And my guess, it would take no less than 15 years. He gave us a proposal where we could switch to wireless. And they are in that business now. They weren't when we first started dealing with them, but now they own 5 wireless companies. And they are in that business, and he gave us a proposal where if we can participate with a little bit of skin in the game, over the next 2 years, there's also going to be a follow-on tranche of money the following year after this October. And if we can participate in both of those, and we may even not need to do much in the second one. It really depends on what the cost ends up being to do this. But he can give a very capable wireless capability to thousands of our residents versus a few hundred if we had stuck with the original plan. And so listen to him and look at my blog, and you'll get more details on that. But he, like I said, he requested a working group. We have this on our discussion agenda for the next meeting. And I'm going to recommend to our board that at least 2 of you guys are on that working group, elected officials, and then Dr. Rice and maybe somebody else if he needs them, along with other stakeholders, possibly like Robin up at the park. I've discussed this with her, and they have a Wi-Fi need up there. But put a working group together so we can get the information together and the data and make a recommendation to our board on funding, what part of this we will fund, whether we can do the whole 500K or some portion of it. The less we do, the less opportunity we have to get additional dollars in October. So that's a decision I think that we all need to struggle with. But this pandemic has highlighted the fact that everybody has to have internet, and it's as important as water and sewer and electricity almost these days, and especially for students with the process that they have to do for distance learning and so forth. So that's really what I'm thinking about as my number one priority in our consolidated budgets as we work this out. I hope I have your support for getting internet to the kids too, because I think it's just, there's so many reasons that we have to do that, that we really need to give it serious consideration. In a $53 million budget, I would be willing to cut about anything to find money to do internet with, so that's kind of my thoughts on it. The next topic I have a question for Julia. You answered me this the other day, but I don't think I got the full answer, or I don't think I understood exactly the full answer. We have, whenever you guys split the 2 tax rates and had a separate tax rate for the school, you created a separate fund for that. And Julia told us in our budget meeting the other day that they have a $300,000 fund balance in there that they could possibly use to fund additional current expense, additional areas in your current expense request. The part of the question I didn't ask, or I didn't get an answer to, there's also a group of sales tax that has to go to the school.
That's in another fund that has a fund balance. But you got to remember, I don't get two of the sales tax payments I don't get till July and August, and you cannot budget those until you receive them.
Okay, so my base question is, we do have a fund balance in that sales tax as well, right?
Yeah, it's not
That's
but
a
$100
yes,
some
that's a
thousand
yes,
dollars,
right.
yeah.
And that's sales tax that has to go to the school, can't be used otherwise. Does it have to go to capital or can it go to
It
current?
has to go to capital.
Okay, that's what I thought, I wasn't sure. So how much is the fund balance in that?
120, and I'm using 24,000 to balance their capital budget this year.
Okay, so that leaves, how much do you say is in it?
About 120.
So there's 96,000 left in there. Can we budget that now or not, or is it too early?
We can.
We could if we wanted to. And then what did you say about the other payment?
The May and June sales tax, we do not get that till July and August, and you cannot budget that sales tax because you have not received it yet.
Why? Because you don't know how much it is?
No, law says
Statute
we
says
have
you
to
do it.
accrue it, but you cannot budget it until then, next year.
So it has to get held for the following year.
I mean, you could do a budget amendment in the next fiscal year when we receive it.
Well, maybe that's part of our contingency plan then, is to, if, once we receive it, maybe that'd be the first place we would go for some kind of emergency that we don't expect. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, good. That answered that question. And then the last question I was going to ask Dr. Rice, and he started talking about it a few minutes ago, was what do you expect out of operations for this fall? And, you know, the things I hear, this thing like the discussion we had on the school bus are ridiculous, you know. We can't do that. We can't do masks on everybody all the time. We can't do it. I don't know. You know, when you have these discussions with your counterparts, or maybe with the leadership down there, whoever's giving you this guidance, I hope maybe you can tell them, keep it in the form of guidance, and we'll do it if we can. If it's mandates, then sorry, we're not doing it. We can't do it.
I will tell you, the problem is the superintendents are very split on this. There's part of the superintendents that believe that we need hard guidance so that everybody's on a level playing field. And you're not saying, well, this system's doing this, why don't you care about your kids? Because you start playing off. And then the other group is like, but if you give us hard guidance, we can't open because we don't have the funding to do what other districts do.
Put us in that category.
And I have...
I mean, one size fits all is just never
Well,
works
and I agree that there are some guidelines that we need to be consistent on, and then there's some that we need gray area to be able to play in. And so that's why we've asked for minimum uniform guidance and then some gray areas to play in. Because we don't have the funding that other districts do. We talk about, and we didn't have it in our capital projects this year, to do a rekeying project, but for the last 2 years, we've done a rekeying project. One of our neighboring districts, they said, as part of, and this was not even a thing with our commissioners, they said, as part of closing school this year, we're going to rekey every building every exterior door in our district with over 90 schools. Oh, I called Dr. Taylor that afternoon and told her, I said, can you imagine just making the decision to spend that kind of money? I mean, that they have it laying around to do that with. It blows our minds to have that kind of, and we're just in different places. And so, one district talked about a $75 million plan that they were going to do immediately and didn't know why we weren't all on board with it. I knew immediately why we weren't on board with it. So I think that some consistent guidelines are good for a base minimum, but then there's got to be a lot of gray area that takes into account. Again, COVID-19, we see the daily numbers going up in Stokes County, but it's not Charlotte. And so don't hold me accountable to what Charlotte deals with.
Yeah. I think if they give you mandatory things, they need to
Tell you what the funding source is for them.
and then the gray stuff, I guess we can deal with. But it ain't down here, I can tell you. The funding source ain't down here for their mandates. Understand, it just didn't.
Then just let me close, a couple of things I didn't mention on the internet, I kind of halfway did, but
if we're able to obtain this funding over the next couple of years, each time you get this funding, it only takes 6 months to install this stuff. So if we were to get funding this year, funding next year, if we needed it, and 6 months, within a couple of years, we can have everybody, probably most everybody in the county that's reachable by this, and it's a lot. It works well. Within a couple of years, we can have them with internet, and that's like a reduction of 12 or 15 years to what it was going to be on the other program. And then the recommendation, once you get those wireless customers, they start generating revenue that plows right back into our system. All the revenue that's generated here goes back into Stokes County, back into the network. So eventually you could turn off the wireless and put fiber into the places that have the most demand. So it doesn't eliminate the fiber, which is a better capability. It just gives you the option to get something to everybody quickly, and then follow it with the fiber down the road if there's a demand to do that. And a lot of people may be happy with just what they can do on the fiber. He said you can do just about anything you need to do with the wireless connection. So,
Well, we were told that money would come back in here to put fiber in the ground, like the profits coming in off of it. So.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the only logical thing I guess you would do with the money. Once you got everybody on wireless, then all of that revenue from the wireless would come back and go into putting wire in the ground or fiber in the ground eventually. And the price for this is $45 a month, and for low income folks, $35. And he mentioned the possibility of even trying to have a student rate of $35 a month. So this is much like a revelation compared to what we were working on before. So anyway, just if you would just get smart on it from.
Is this similar to what Stokes Wi-Fi is doing already?
I would
think so. I think it's
Similar
probably,
speeds, probably.
Speeds are probably the same, I think. It's not, it's that, what did he say? What's that?
100 up, 100 down.
No, that's the future data.
I thought it's up to 50, didn't it?
Yeah, 25 and 50.
Yeah.
And then he said in the future, the definition would probably change to 100 and 100, and if they do that, they will fund it.
whoever makes that change will fund it.
Well, and just to let you know, the Senate Bill 704 was passed and signed into law not long ago, and part of that was calendar revisions, where they added 5 remote learning days to our calendar moving forward. So the expectation is to do 5 days from home again in this current calendar at minimum. And then, and the reason they say that is because because of what's gone on this spring, which has not been perfect, but I commend our teachers for doing a great job. But if a hurricane were to come through, like happened in the past on the coast, and knock them out of commission for a month, that the expectation is they continue doing school distance learning. If we were to have a bad year of snow and ice storms, anytime the governor declared a state of emergency for more than so many days, we would be doing distance learning for those days to keep up with the calendar. So that is the new expectation going forward, is that we do this. And I will say that the number one complaint that I've had to me about this whole thing in the spring is when teachers can't meet face-to-face online with students. When they're doing the Google Meets and they can interact and the kids interact, they feel like they're getting a little bit of socialization rather than isolation. The parents that have complained to me, their students have been isolated, either with packet work because they don't have internet or because a teacher doesn't have internet at their home. And so they're doing more just online, here's an assignment, email me for some explanation and turn it in. And they feel isolated because they're not having face-to-face interaction. You know, we're social creatures. We kind of like seeing each other. I know some of us, as we've done some of the phone conferences and phone meetings, we're kind of ready to get back in the room and see each other's facial expressions a little bit because there's that whole part of it. So that's been the biggest complaint, is when they have limited the face-to-face part of it. So that would be a wonderful plan to help eliminate some of that as we move forward with at least with a minimum of 5 remote learning days a year.
Commissioner Morris, I thought about something you had said. You talked to some citizens in the county, and they were willing to do a tax increase just to get the internet through the county. Something I thought about this, there's also the older generation that just does not care to have it, and taxing them would be kind of unfair, so I thought about reaching out to Stokes Wi-Fi, River Street and others to see, well, how would they feel about adding an extra $10 or so a month per customer, and that money come back to the county to help put this thing in faster, so that way the ones who's really wanting the internet is help paying for it instead of taxing the ones who don't.
Be a good question for that working group to look at.
And I mean, the internet prices, they're both them, Stokes and Wi-Fi and River Street is not bad prices all compared to what I'm paying for Spectrum. It's actually really cheap.
Yeah.
So I mean, if it went up $10 a month.
Yeah, well, ask that question, I agree with you.
I know when I initially contacted Stokes Wi-Fi trying to get it, there was until the equipment is paid for cost, and then your monthly cost. So you were actually financing at zero interest the equipment until you owned it.
And this co-op runs under a whole set of different rules, advantages to us that the private guys can't do those. So that,
$500,000 cost, less than $1 per citizen a month, correct? I mean, with our current population is what, 47,000? $1 a month per citizen would be over $500,000, right? That'd be $12 a year.
yeah, yeah.
So $1 a month.
Yeah, but this working group would really need to explore all those possibilities for how to do this. The thing I would focus on is not missing the opportunity for these big tranches of outside money. I think that'll be our top priority. Two things he also mentioned, if we talk to our legislators, elected officials, talking to legislators, or anybody really talking to them. Originally, the $30 million was not going to be available except one tier of county. But he said he's pretty sure they're going to change that to the tier, doesn't matter. So we need to emphasize that with the legislators. And then we also need to make sure the legislators don't do anything with this $30 million that's coming in October. Don't yank it and put it somewhere else that we need it for this purpose. So that'd be two things, good things to reinforce with the legislators if you have to be talking to our state legislators.
I just want to emphasize on the fact that if the county does decide to help out with this, and just say we did put out $500,000 to it, to make sure that it's going to these unserved areas instead of being more of a thing to turn into, I'm going to wipe out my competition. I mean, and I'm just using this example, not saying they're doing this. Just like we did put out there in River Street, got it, and they used it more to push Stokes Wi-Fi out. Well, that's kind of unfair because Stokes Wi-Fi started on their own, and it could be vice versa. If we decide to help out Stokes Wi-Fi, it's not fair for them to kind of cut in. You know, the main thing is hitting these unserved areas.
You just have to factor in the difference. It's a different playing field for a co-op and a private company. And I'm all for private companies, but they can't help you like a co-op because the co-ops just have an advantage, you know. But I don't think River Street would try to get rid of any private competition or anything. That would be I would think they just focus where those guys couldn't go. Right. Would be the emphasis.
That's my thing. I just want to make sure it's.
And I can say for myself, being one of those underserved areas, I don't care whether it's co-op, private company, or federal government.
Exactly.
I just need internet.
We just gotta have it. That's the
You don't have it, you don't care who's providing it. If the cost is the same, you want it.
Exactly. And the most calls I've had during the pandemic were about why are you guys not getting internet for these students that are exactly.
Well, that was my most recent email.
That's the call I had all the time. Now, I always ask them, would you be willing to pay more tax? And every one of them has said yes so far. I told them that probably wasn't what we were going to be doing, but I'm just curious.
I want to speak to our chairman's question about crowding out other providers. I think we have to give River Street credit where it's due. There's Surrey Communications that serves a part of our county, and instead of trying to crowd them out, if I'm understanding correctly, they work very well with Surrey Communications. They've said, you're serving this area, we'll leave you alone. And hopefully they'll take that same approach toward Stokes Wi-Fi. Could I mention something about the virus? I get briefings, we all do, from our Director of Emergency Services. And when I get those briefings, I run the numbers. Currently, there are 24 active cases in our population. I think you mentioned 47,000. I use 46,000 and ran the numbers. That's 1/120th of 1% of our population. Now, I think when you look at certain other counties, the highly populated counties, Mecklenburg, Wake, Guilford, Forsyth, a few others, their numbers are going to be quite different from a small rural county like ours. And yet, you made this point, and I think Dr. Rice made it as well, it's a one-size-fits-all thing. The people making the decisions are applying the same standards to counties like ours who really doesn't have that much of a problem right now. One thing I'm concerned about is when the restrictions are lifted, whatever it might be, the number of cases are probably going to escalate. They're probably going up substantially. But why would we, and I'm just kind of tagging along with your observations, why would we be the same standards be imposed on us as some of these other counties that really have a problem?
That's when we reach out to our state officials there and get with them, fight for us on that. So, no, they ain't even listen to the commissioners.
The one thing that I would say is why schools may fall under it. My belief, not a doctor, I am a doctor, but not that kind. Population density has a lot to do with it. I mean, when you work in a building that has, like Winston Tower, that maybe has 200 employees in one building. Well, Stokes County doesn't have that type of facility. Most of our businesses are smaller populations. We don't have large apartment complexes all over the city or housing projects where a lot of people use the same doors. The one place that we do is schools. And so like at West Stokes High School, 900 people walk in there every day between students and staff. So population, so that's where they would look at, that is the biggest mass gathering in this county, is at the schools, at our sporting events, at those things. And I think that may be why they're looking to say, even though Stokes County doesn't have the same overall population problem as a Charlotte Meck, it's because your biggest congregation of students haven't been meeting for the last 3 months. So that's the thing that worries me as a school leader is when we go back is, what if we have, 2 cases are considered an outbreak? An outbreak's a real scary word that to headline the news or to no offense to the Stokes News, but when you put that on the headline of a paper and say you have an outbreak at this school, that's 2 cases. But an outbreak looks scary. But when you pull 900 people together at West Stokes High School or 600 together at South Stokes High School, the chances of somebody catching something from somebody else is higher. And those are the biggest population gatherings that we have in this county. And again, luckily so, at our basketball games, at our football games, at our band concerts, our communities have always shown up to support our schools, and that is our biggest gatherings, which you have the biggest chance for contamination at that point. But I think that's why they're looking at that, because around the state, we have our big metropolitan areas, but the rural counties are the places where the mass gatherings occur. I kind of joked this week that people that have had their 12, 13, 14-year-olds at home for the last 3 months, if we were to have a dance at our middle schools this Friday night, parents, I think, would pay whatever to get them out of their house for a couple of hours. We probably could fund some of these projects if they would allow us to have them. But, that's where the big population centers are in these rural counties, are schools and churches and athletic events.
And just we're going to take about a 5-minute recess, and we'll have to get back and finish this because I believe they have a planning meeting tonight. Is that correct?
A planning board meeting tonight.
Okay. We'll just take a 5-minute recess.
Good question, please.
Yes, sir.
Unofficially. I've heard from
I
various.
think I love more than bottled water.
Wacky gavel should this one. Why you bring strawberry cream back? Oh, you bring strawberry cream back.
Call the meeting back to order. I believe Commissioner Mendenhall, you have some questions.
Just some comments.
Okay.
I'll try to make this as brief as possible. I don't want to go into the next meeting. This here is always a tough job for me because I've been on both sides of the table, coming up here asking for money, and now on the other side. However, I do want to make a few comments, and then leave it at that. Always keep up with past recommendations, past requests, and what we gave the school system and every other department. This is my 4th year on the county commissioner board, so it's my 4th budget I've worked with the school system. My first year with the county commissioners, we gave the school system $10,968,860, which was an increase of over 1.1 million. And in capital, we gave them $500,800. On the year 2 that I was on the board with them, we gave them on current $12,051,051, which was an increase of a little over $1 million. And we gave them on capital $1,780,000. Last year, we gave them $13,093,003, which was an increase of $824,000. And we gave them the same amount on capital, $1,780,000 again, so that stabilized it. So I do want everyone in here that doesn't keep up with this type of thing to know that we have tried to work hard with the school system. And I hope the school system appreciates that. Because I know when I was on their side, we got increases. We were very appreciative. I want to commend Chairman Rogers, Dr. Rice, Taylor, and all the board, the education members for their hard work on getting the capital amount down to the amount you got. A little over 1.5. Because like I said, for 2 years in a row, we've given you $1,780,000. And you reduced that knowing the situation. I think everybody in this room knows what we are dealing with this year. Unusual times bring unusual responses and things that you have to do sometimes that you don't know about. So I say to all of y'all, all of the Board of Education members, Chairman, Dr. Rice, I say to each of you, I commend you on working that hard to get capital down to that amount. Because I know it's not an easy job. You start dealing with roofs and you start dealing with major projects, boilers, chillers. All of those are very expensive items, and I'm sure it probably was $6 million or more before you started chopping at it. But he did a great job with that. I just want to commend you on that. Current, you're asking a little more, and that is where I'm not going to delay the meeting here this much today. It's going to have to be the commissioner's job to go to work on that and to come up with what we can. We know what the county manager has recommended. We have his amount, and we know what y'all's amount is that y'all requested. And
as always, you know, there are times where you, have compromised, you work together, come up with an amount. But we have, I just wanted to reiterate that. I hope to everybody that's watching this live stream or whatever, that we have tried to be worked very well with the school system the last 3 years I've been on it. I think, Dr. Rice, you've been here each year.
Yes, sir.
And I hope you feel like we've worked well with you.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to commend y'all on your ability to bring the capital down. That's impressive because it helps us. But on current, you know, we got our work out. Our 5 commissioners will have our work to deal with the current. We see what y'all's response, prioritization was on your new request, the 4 new requests. You don't have to explain that to me. I understand very well what each one of them is. The adjustment for the classified employee maintenance. You know, I've known David Boyles for many years. And so it's not a situation of not knowing that particular situation. I know how tough the bus routing is. So, Brad has his hands full with everything else, and it's a tough job. I know how tough a job that Tim's routing. That was a monster when it first came on. And I think this firefighter thing personally is a very good thing. Made by the 5 commissioners, and we'll all talk about it. But I think anything that you come up with a new elective that can have a positive impact on young students moving forward is a good thing. So to the Board of Education, thank you for your hard work, and appreciate everything you've done. I know you put in a lot of hours, and I can see that by what's on this paper, and our commissioners go to work now on the hard part. Thank you for your work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to our county manager's recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, on May the 11th, I presented a recommended budget to the board, and it had stiff cuts in it, cuts that I recommended due to the uncertainty of what our economy and what's going on in our state. Cuts that I recommended due to budget work session we had on what the commissioners would love to see in the budget, and cuts that on every department that requested any new salaries or new positions. I cut them all down because I was uncertain about what was going to happen in the future. I did not want to hire a new position and turn right around and lay it back off because of some downfall in our tax revenue side of it. So I would elected to make sure that the ad valorem side of it looked well due to our economy, and which is always a trickle-down effect because we don't see what happens to us 6 months later. You may get some adverse effect from it, but your sales tax is being affected immediately from it, and you can see what is happening sooner on that. With that said, the county has had a significant cut to it. I tried to cut anywhere from 2 to 3.5% out of everyone's budget. I tried to bring the school budget down to where each one of the county and the schools' current expense had the same tax rate, and then
when I looked at their capital outlay, appeared to me that the school board has already done everything they possibly could with that. And because that is sales tax. So with the current expense that you see, you had a deficit of $961,000 that the school were asking for more, which than last year's budget, which gave you a 3.25% tax increase if you done it. I cut that plus 3% more and brought everything back down to where it was to begin with in 2019-20 budget, and made the actual 31.31 tax rate be the same. With that, you still had close to a $4 million request from the fund balance that would be needed to balance the budget. And with that, I'm assured that the commissioners and the Board of Education and all could get together and come to a understand or agreement on what needs to be taken care of or what needs to be added to it, whatever. So, for me to go in and say, this needs to be funded, that needs to be funded, that's a question for the Board of Education themselves. They will determine what is their priorities, not me. And what I was trying to do to the best of my ability was to give you a budget that was balanced, that did not eat into your fund balance as much as it possibly could. And in doing that, I had to make these cuts that you see now on that. So with that, Mr. Chairman, like the other night, I did recommend that you do consider the fireman's fund and consider placing it in there, because I do believe that would be a payoff for the taxpayers in the long run in making sure we have adequate firefighters that are volunteering now to continue to volunteer. But it's like Dr. Wright said, if you don't have volunteers, you're looking at a $9 million salary line item just for your fire departments. So that I do recommend that this board consider placing in this budget as a priority on that. And if anything, if the board feels like there's some other areas that they want to add to it, that's why you were voted in, to do the hard jobs. And sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's easy. This year you got a difficult year. So I'm sure you'll do what's right, and I'm sure the Board of Education will make sure that children of this county is taken care of the best they possibly can. But y'all got a difficult job in front of you on those school systems, especially not getting the guidance from the state and other areas on how to take care of things. But I think with what's went on so far, we've got some very good hands-on experience of how to take care of things, and what I am hearing out there, that you've done a good, decent job with it. So you can't do nothing but just improve from that point. But Mr. Chairman and board members, it is what it is, and I know that don't sound like much, but together maybe we can come up to a conclusion that everybody's happy with.
Thank you, sir. Committed to the school board. I also want to commend each and every one of y'all for putting your time. I know it was hard for you guys getting this done. I appreciate y'all's hard work in this as well.
And we got a salary study that is being done here in the county. That will be come to the Board of Commissioners soon on how that's to be, what it does and how it's going to be laid out for implementation. Maybe that could be something that the school board and the board members get together as far as the salary increase that you're talking about on there. Also, you got a building assessment being done, and the schools are up to be started this year in this budget to start assessing the structures, and I'm sure that once everything's done, it's going to be a very large dollar amount to a lot of things. So, but we'll work together. do what needs to be done.
Mr. Rogers or Mr. Oakley as well, if I may, are you referring to the third line here on the school current expense fund in the county?
You're referring to
As
your.
far as the total appropriation of $12,719,430, that number?
That line 3.
Okay. With the decrease of 461,273, is that it?
Yes,
Okay. So about a 3.52%.
that's correct. That's correct.
Should you say something about this column? No.
No, want to discuss things with the board members later.
So roughly, the school system we would need to look at our current expense budget and cut the 461 out of what we proposed. Right, unless the county commissioners can, see funding, going back and changing your mind, right?
I would,
It's a tough time, so I don't envy your.
I would also let Julia Edwards here talk about some changes that could be made that was already done, recommended to the board. Commissioner Morris had already spoke on some of that, so she can go in and give you good finance director talk on it.
Lynette, listen up, because you're the only one that understands it.
I have given the board, I looked at projecting what I thought the fund balance would be at the end of June 30th in this current expense fund, which is where your tax dollars go to and we pay you out of now. And it's going to be about 320,000, I think I projected it today. And so I had recommended that the board use 300,000 of that. And that's that final column that just says budget over the top. I have given that to the board, but the board has not, but that was just that was just an option to give the board to say there's money in there that could be used. And that would reduce the decrease down to 161,273, which would be 1.23%.
Which would help a lot if the board and the two boards want to consider that.
Yeah.
And that would be in a fund balance that is here for the schools because we had to create it in the 3131 tax rate. And once you create that, that creates a fund that she has to put aside for you. And in that fund each year, non-appropriated monies is what goes into the fund balance. And that's why that's created here. Over the last, 2 years?
Yeah.
And you still have your fund balance that you have.
We also in this fund have the same thing we have in the sales tax. The motor vehicle tax does not come in for June till July, and we can't appropriate that because I have to pull it back and accrue it, but we can't budget that until the next year. Yes.
I would like to add something if I can, Mr. Rogers. Just a little something here that I had wanted to say to the commissioners. I just wanted to thank this Board of Commissioners for always working well with Stokes County Schools and the Board of Education. We do appreciate your willingness to help students and staff, and all of your hard work and support is greatly appreciated. Thank you. You all are funding, in the past you have funded the much needed increase in school instructional supplies last year, and that has helped each school's individual budget and allowed more resources to reach the classroom. Thank you. Thank you for supporting full-time SROs in every school. This has been the most positive addition to our schools with the most positive feedback coming from parents and staff. These officers do way more than student safety. They build relationships and offer friendships to some of our most vulnerable students. Thank y'all. Thank you for funding a true 4% supplement for our teachers. This helps with retention and shows them how valued they are. Also, thank you for our social workers. As you all face tough decisions due to this severe downturn in our economy due to COVID-19 pandemic, please remember Stokes County Schools. I personally hope businesses can reopen as soon as possible and our county's economy can start to grow again. many families are struggling and in need of work. I pray for our families and residents during these difficult times and pray that our commissioners can do their very best to navigate through all of this. I also want to say with the growing demand of virtual learning in our schools right now, more than ever, our residents need internet. I hope our county commissioners will consider all possible means to work towards internet for our students and residents. I have supported River Street and appreciate their efforts in the county. I hope the county's partnerships can grow and work together for a quick solution for internet. And again, like I mentioned earlier, I love the opportunity for a fire academy. I just kind of worry if right now, given the downturn in the economy and the competition that it would create with other vocational skill courses, that we could see a downturn in our carpentry, masonry, and automotive type courses. But I just want us to consider all sides, to the situation. And again, just thank you, because I know it's such a difficult time right now. Something none of us ever imagined would happen. And anyway, just praying for you all, and thank you for the hard work and relationship we have. So thank y'all.
Spicy, you have anything?
Well, I would also like to thank the Board of Commissioners for welcoming us and talking about the current and the capital budgets. A lot of what Cheryl said I agree with, and I did want to ask a question though on this where it says the second recommendation. Is that something we can consider?
That's what he's talking about.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You're talking about the fire academy?
Yeah.
No, sir, the 300,000 fund balance.
300,000 is something that the two boards can talk about.
I didn't know about it, so just, as I was looking at it now, I hadn't heard about it. Did you know about it?
Ms. Moore handed me these the same time y'all did.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about it until our last budget meeting, so.
No, okay, so it didn't want to pass down to us. Well, it's something certainly to consider. I wanted to ask more of a question. When you said the 31 tax, could you explain that again a little bit, Julia?
3131, that is based on what you receive from the tax ad valorem side of it. And with your current request, whatever the boards agree on that the school will get and whatever the county gets, then that's the 3131. See, right now our tax rate is 62 cents. That's what the state looks at.
Okay.
But we've got to sit up in two funds to where people can see what's going to what. And that way 31 cents last year went half of the tax ad valorem tax money went to the school current expense, half went to the county.
33.3.
Last year it was 33.2. The school got a little more. This year it's coming back to 31. I didn't want to go under that by the fact that with the cuts we were making, we wanted to at least stay what we were at last year, and we didn't go any further than that. So it's just a tax rate to show the people where their money is going out of the 62 cents, and that's based on tax dollars.
Right, and I understand that. But you said something about you kept some of it. Do you keep some of the money, or do you just send it over?
Are you talking about fund balance?
Do you keep a fund balance that is something the schools can use if they need it, or this 31? If the for example, this year the 33.20%, which he's reducing it to 31 cents this year. That goes into a school current expense fund, right? It's separate from general fund. It's fund by itself, and that's how the fund balance comes up. Because at the end of the year, whatever's not spent is the fund balance. Last year, I think it was $59,000, and this year I've estimated it and I forgot what it was the year before, but I think I've estimated it to the best I can, what I think taxes are gonna come in, for another month. And I'm coming up like $320,000. But I like that, I just said 300 because I could have a figure that might be off a little bit, and I don't want to take a chance.
It's unappropriated funds.
Yeah.
Unappropriated funds, so if we collect more money in taxes than we
Was
projected,
budgeted.
or what was budgeted, then that unappropriated funds goes into a fund balance for you, and that's that fund balance we're talking
Yeah.
about, because we created the tax rate for you to have. So we created a fund, an account to have for you.
And where does the account lie? Here?
Here.
That's what I
Here.
thought, that's what my question
It's
was.
not the school system's fund, but what Nat
That's
has, it's one that we have here in the county.
And you keep it in your fund balance for the schools. Can the schools request it at times in need?
If there's fund balance in there.
Yes.
So why would there not be a fund balance in there?
If tax revenue didn't come in, sales tax
Yeah.
didn't come in,
That
so
sales
it'd
tax.
be, then you would have a shortfall, then you would be on the deficit side instead of the plus side, which would definitely not give you a fund balance for this year.
But right now, you're projecting it'll be 320,000.
Right now, we have $300,000 in it from the previous years.
That, and he's putting that money to make this balance to the figure he has there that you're looking at.
Right.
They're appropriating part of their fund balance to balance it as much as they can.
These
That's what I'm saying.
state tax collections went down for some reason. Then we would, if you have the fund balance, you have it there to make up that shortfall. I'm using that as an example.
But it's there now
Yeah.
for these two boards in consideration of, do you want to use it for anything?
That fund
Right.
balance will come down, except for you 20,000.
If we budget the 300,000 next year, you won't have 300,000.
Right.
But it went up 250,000 this year.
Well, I don't know
Or
the year
240,
before.
you said we were 50.
I know
59
the
this
first year it was 59, and I don't remember what it was last year.
We've had a couple of good years on
Yeah.
sales tax and ad valorem. So
Thank y'all for considering that option.
So the good years that you had, you still kept it in a fund balance.
yes, ma'am.
That's called school current expense.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that.
Is that all you have? Ms. Taylor, do you have anything?
I just wanted a question with everything that we have. I want to know that the commissioners are still putting priority on the SROs and that the safety of the students, is that still going to be the forefront of decision making for current expense?
It's
We're all saying yes, Katie.
It's all budgeted in the sheriff's department.
I don't think so.
Pardon?
Okay.
Who said all
Well,
said yes?
I thought everybody was. Commissioner Langford is saying no.
No,
I didn't say no, I just said I don't think so.
I think so. What? The SROs
We
being
had talked
funded?
about it.
Yeah,
The
they are being.
SROs are funded in the sheriff's budget.
The what?
The SROs are funded in the sheriff's department's budget.
Budget,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understand that.
Yes, sir.
but we didn't cut them,
We didn't cut them. It stayed the same.
Right.
They're there.
That was something that the schools and the commissioners were very adamant about last year, so I didn't fool with them. I left them in the sheriff's department's budget.
Thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Taylor?
no.
Yeah. Mine's simple. I don't have a long, eloquent speech. We appreciate everything we were given. We're going to work with you. I think we presented a budget that shows that we are serious about helping everybody survive together. We've got a major focus working with these fine young ladies we're gonna take care of the students, we're gonna keep the citizens in the background, because ultimately, we are the stewards of the money they are providing, just like y'all are. So if it's something, when I view the budget, and I think I can speak for the rest of the board, when we view the budget, if it's gonna save us money going forward, whether it be firefighter, that's the reason it made the list. Whether it be retention, that's the reason it made the list. Whether it be maintenance cost, that's the reason it made it the list. We're trying to save money for the next 50 years, not just for the next 5 months spending money. So, that being said,
He's real serious. He brought us all strawberries. So.
well, I can't keep the deer out because I don't have free fencing. Oh, you wasn't expecting that one.
I think we need to adjourn before something else happens.
Does any of the commissioners like to add anything before we, Commissioner Walker?
Thank you. Just an item or two. I'm interested in the dynamics involved in making this budget work up front and ongoing. Did I hear correctly, maybe Julia, maybe Commissioner Morris, or maybe someone else say that if we needed to, for example, if things go better than we expect, we can come back and take a look and maybe make a positive adjustment. But I don't think we're going to take away anything if things don't go as well. Am I understanding correctly?
Capital. We can come back later with capital if the sales tax comes in.
So sales tax plummets lower than we're expecting. We might have to adjust our funding.
Well, yeah.
But if it's better, are we prepared to adjust it in a positive direction?
We could, yes.
If we need to.
Or chose
if
to.
our needs still not being met. Can we do that with both current expense and capital?
Current expense, no, if the board chooses to use, no. That has no sales tax in it, that's all tax collection, that's all tax.
So, for example, if something comes along like what's very important to Commissioner Morris, me, others, high-speed internet access, and the price tag going in is $500,000. What impact would using, shifting that $500,000 around have on what we're doing for the schools and what we're budgeting for the county? Does it just...
It's just the county, that would have nothing to do with the school's budget.
The reason I'm asking, I know it wouldn't directly have anything to do with the school's budget, but it's less funds the county has to work with because we're taking more out of our fund balance. That's 1.25 percentage points of our fund balance. So if it was going to be 20, that drops it to 18.5 right there. I really like the tone of school board member comments, the appreciation expressed toward our board and trying to work with their needs this year. I think our manager is presenting a budget that's realistic, and I think from the information Julia just shared about the 300,000 or so that we have to work with, it shows a good faith effort on our part to try to find funds to use for the school needs. And with that, I think we're getting closer to funding the request. How much was left? 100 and some thousand? After we apply the 300?
161, 273.
That's a lot better than what it was. I think that's pretty well it. Just wanted to be sure I understood and not get 2 miles up the road and think, oh, I wish I'd asked this or that. So I think with what I've heard discussed with school board members and our board members, I have a lot better understanding of what we're dealing with now than when I first came here today. And I too appreciate the positive expressions from school board members regarding our board's work on the budget. and we appreciate all y'all do. I know it's not easy, not particularly easy for any of us during this budget cycle because we're on new ground. We've never had to deal with things like we're having to deal with now, and there's still a pretty good assortment of unknowns out there. Guess we'll just have to work together and do the best we can when we identify whatever needs we're having to deal with beyond what we've talked about today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll stop there.
Yes, sir. Is there more questions, comments for you?
I got a comment I'll make. In serving on both the Board of Education and the Commissioners, I know that one time it used to be a situation where the board members would say, well, I hate to go up to talk to the old commissioners because they're not going to help us anyway. That was sort of the attitude. But I've seen that attitude change over the last few years. And I am really proud to see it change because, and I've said this over and over many times, the school board and the county is working for the same taxpayer. We don't have a segment of school board taxpayers and a segment of county taxpayers. So we are serving them both. Both of us are serving the same taxpayer. But anyway, I think we've had a good meeting today, and I've enjoyed listening and hearing the comments made about what the needs are and what we hopefully can do. And I feel like the commissioners will do everything we can to help our children in the school system. So, thank you all for coming.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Don't we need to adjourn first? Y'all are recessing, aren't you?
No.
Okay.
Technically, do they have to adjourn too?
They have to adjourn too, but you can do it either way. You can go first.
I'll let you go first. I got the hammer.
I just wanted you. We had to go second the first time, I'm afraid. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Ms. Tedder, I'll need you to state. You're the only one that's not there, so we'll figure it out. Governor Cooper can figure it out. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Sorry.
Header, aye.
Thank you, Ms. Tedder. We're adjourned.
Make a motion, we adjourn. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Header.